The soft glow of candlelight dances across the stained glass windows of a small Roman church. The air hums with the faint echo of an organ, its notes lingering like a whispered prayer. And in the shadows, a young girl stands alone, her shoulders trembling, her tears falling silently. Have you ever cried in a place so quiet you thought no one could hear? Felt so broken, so unseen, that you believed your pain would go unnoticed forever? This isn't a story of grand ceremonies or worldly fame. No crowds, no fanfare. Just a humble church tucked in Rome's heart, where the weight of one girl's sorrow fills the air. Her name is Sophia, and tonight she's come here not for faith, but for refuge, a place to hide her tears. But someone sees her. One evening, Pope Francis, the Holy Father himself, steps quietly into the church, his visit unannounced, his heart open. He moves through the pews, his eyes gentle, searching, and then they find her, a girl crying in the dark, her pain a silent call. What happens next is so tender, so profound, it brings an entire congregation to tears. Stay with me. Inspired by the Holy Father's countless acts of compassion, this is a story of healing, empathy, and a moment that reminds us, no one is ever truly alone. Who's been there for you when you felt most unseen? Let's step back to a quiet corner of Rome, where the city's pulse fades into the stillness of a small church. Sophia, barely 22, stands in the shadows, her hands clasped tightly, her cheeks stained with tears. She wasn't always like this, a girl whose eyes carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. Growing up in a sleepy Italian village, Sophia was the light of her family, her laughter filling their modest home. Raised in the warmth of Sunday Mass and her grandmother's rosary prayers, she once believed in a world where love could mend all wounds. But life has a way of breaking such beliefs. 2 years ago, a tragedy struck, the loss of her younger brother, Matteo, in a sudden accident. The grief tore through her family, unraveling the threads that held them together. Sophia's faith, once a steady flame, flickered out. She stopped praying, stopped hoping, stopped seeing the point of it all. Rome was her escape, a city where she could disappear, where no one would ask why her smiles were gone. Tonight, she wandered into this church, not for God, but for silence, a place to let her tears fall unseen. She sits in the last pew, her scarf pulled tight, her heart heavy with questions no one can answer. Why did this happen? Why does it hurt so much to keep living? Across the years, another scene unfolds. Buenos Aires, decades ago, under a sky heavy with dusk. A younger Jorge Mario Bergoglio, not yet Pope Francis, walks the crowded streets, his cassock brushing the pavement. He's a priest in his early 30s, his heart full of zeal, but tempered by the struggles he's seen. One evening, after a long day visiting the sick, he steps into a small cafe, its warmth a refuge from the city's chill. There in a corner, he sees a girl, no older than Sophia, her face buried in her hands, her sobs quiet but piercing. Jorge sits beside her, offering a gentle smile. She tells him her story, a family fractured, a dream lost, a faith she can't hold on to. Jorge listens, his eyes steady, his presence a quiet anchor. When she finishes, he speaks softly, his words simple but profound. Pain is not the end, my child. It's a door to hope, if you dare to walk through. Those words lift her, if only a little, and she leaves with a spark she hadn't felt in months. Jorge never sees her again, but her face, Her tears stay with him, a reminder of the hearts he's vowed to serve. Years later, as Pope Francis, that memory lingers, guiding him to the broken, the lost, the unseen. Tonight, in a Roman church, Sophia's tears call to him, like an echo from that Buenos Aires cafe. Have you ever carried a pain so deep you thought no one could reach it? The small Roman church glows softly, its candles casting golden flickers across the pews. The congregation murmurs prayers, their voices a gentle hum. But in the corner, Sophia sits alone, her face buried in her hands, her sobs muffled by the weight of her grief. The air feels heavy around her, as if her pain could dim the light itself. Then, a hush falls over the room. Heads turn, whispers fade. Pope Francis, the Holy Father, steps quietly through the arched doorway, his simple white cassock brushing the stone floor. He's come unannounced, seeking a moment of prayer among the faithful, his heart as open as the church's doors. His eyes, warm and searching, sweep across the faces, the elderly clutching rosaries, children fidgeting in their seats, priests bowing in reverence. And then they find her, Sophia, trembling in the shadows, her tears catching the candlelight. Francis pauses, his breath catching a memory stirring from decades ago. A girl in a Buenos Aires cafe, her eyes just as broken. He moves toward her, his steps slow, deliberate, the congregation watching in silent awe. Sophia doesn't notice, lost in her sorrow, until a gentle hand rests on her shoulder. She looks up, startled, her tear-streaked face meeting the Holy Father's kind gaze. "Child," he says softly, his voice like a warm hearth. "May I sit with you?" Sophia nods, her breath shaky, too overwhelmed to speak. Francis sits beside her, close enough to share her silence, far enough to give her space. The church seems to hold its breath, the moment fragile, sacred. He doesn't rush her, doesn't demand her story. He simply waits, his presence a quiet promise that she is seen. Finally, Sophia whispers, her voice breaking, "I've lost everything, my brother, my faith, my hope." Francis nods, his eyes steady, full of a compassion that feels like it could carry the world's pain. "Tell me about him," he says, his words gentle, inviting. Sophia hesitates, then speaks, her voice raw. She tells of Matteo, her younger brother, whose laugh once filled their home, whose life ended too soon in a tragic accident. She tells of her anger, her guilt, her nights praying to a God who seemed silent. "I don't know how to go on," she admits, her tears falling anew. Francis listens, his face etched with understanding, his hands folded in his lap. He doesn't interrupt, doesn't offer quick fixes. He lets her words fill the space, each one a step toward healing. The congregation, still watching, feels the weight of her story, their own hearts stirring. Francis leans closer, his voice low, steady. "You carry him still," he says, "in every tear, every memory. That's not loss, that's love." Sophia's eyes widen, her breath catching, as if his words have unlocked something deep within. She doesn't speak, but her shoulders soften, her sobs quieting. The moment feels eternal, a bridge between two hearts in a church bathed in light. Have you ever been hurt so deeply that it felt like a wound began to heal? The Roman Church is still, its candlelight trembling as if holding its breath. Sophia's voice fades, her story of loss and broken faith hanging heavy in the air. She sits beside Pope Francis, her eyes red, her hands clutching the edge of the pew. The congregation watches, their faces soft with empathy, their own hearts stirred by her pain. Francis remains silent, his gaze steady, his presence like a lighthouse in her storm. Then he speaks, his voice low, warm, carrying the weight of a lifetime's compassion. "Sophia," he says, her name a gentle anchor. "You are not alone. Your brother Matteo lives in you, in your love, your memories, your courage to carry on. And God, He's here, in this church, in these tears, in every heart around you." Sophia's breath catches, her eyes locking with his words cut through her grief, like sunlight piercing a clouded sky. She begins to sob again, but these are different tears, not of despair, but of release, of hope reborn. Francis places a hand on hers, his touch gentle, grounding. The congregation, hearing his words, feels a wave of emotion. An elderly woman dabs her eyes. A young man bows his head, their quiet sniffles filling the church. Francis's heart stirs, a memory flashing. The girl in Buenos Aires, her tearful eyes so like Sophia's. He'd told her, pain is not the end, but a door to hope. Now, decades later, he sees that same hope flickering in Sophia's gaze. He realizes this moment is no accident. It's a thread of destiny, woven through years, bringing him to another soul in need. "Sophia," he continues, his voice breaking slightly, "you are seen, you are loved, and you are enough." The words land like a hymn, and Sophia's sobs deepen, her shoulders shaking. But this time, they're not from sorrow alone. They're from a place of deep, transformative grace. And in that quiet church, with a humble priest beside her, Sophia begins to find a sliver of peace. As the night stretches on, Sophia walks out of that church, her heart lighter, her grief still present, but no longer overwhelming. Pope Francis watches her go, his eyes filled with quiet hope. And though she may never fully understand why tragedy strikes, why pain lingers, she knows now it doesn't define her. If this story touched your heart, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more inspiring tales. Share this with someone who needs to know that no act of kindness is ever wasted. Together, let's create a ripple of gratitude, of grace, of love. So now I ask you, from the heart, who will you thank today?